What happens when one of country music's most respected legends walks onto a morning show set and refuses to play along with the script? What happens when a host pushes too far and a guest decides enough is enough right there in front of millions of viewers? This morning on Good Morning America, Reba McEntire did something that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. The tension was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. And what started as a standard celebrity interview turned into one of the most uncomfortable, jaw-dropping moments in live television history. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, telling me what you think really caused this whole situation to explode the way it did. The morning started like any other day at Good Morning America. The studio lights were bright. The audience was buzzing with energy. And Michael Strahan was in his usual spot on the couch, flashing that signature smile that has made him one of the most recognizable faces in morning television. Reba McEntire was scheduled as one of the guests. Supposedly there'd talk about her latest projects, her tour, and maybe share some stories from her legendary career. Everyone expected the usual charm, the usual laughs, the kind of feel-good segment that morning shows thrive on. But from the moment Reba walked onto that set, something felt different. Michael stood up to greet her, arms open wide, ready for the typical hug and friendly banter that kicks off these interviews. Reba shook his hand instead, firm and professional, and took her seat with a posture that anyone paying attention would recognize as guarded. Michael didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he chose not to notice because he launched right into his introduction with all the enthusiasm of someone who had no idea what was about to unfold. He started with the compliments, talking about how Reba was an icon, a trailblazer, someone who had been dominating the entertainment industry for decades. All true statements, all things that had been said 1,000 times before in 1,000 different interviews. Reba smiled politely, nodded at the right moments, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she was already exhausted by the routine of it all. Michael transitioned into his first question, asking about her tour and whether she ever got tired of life on the road. Reba's answer was measured. She talked about loving her fans, about the energy she got from performing, but she also mentioned how grueling the schedule could be, how much sacrifice went into maintaining a career at this level. It was honest, maybe more honest than Michael was expecting, because he quickly tried to lighten the mood with a joke about how she probably had a tour bus nicer than most people's homes. The audience laughed. Reba didn't. She looked at him for a moment, just a beat longer than comfortable, and said that the tour bus wasn't really the point. She said that people often romanticize life on the road without understanding what it actually meant to be away from family, to miss important moments, to push through exhaustion night after night, because that's what the job required. Michael's smile faltered just slightly, but he recovered quickly, nodding along and trying to steer things back to safer territory. That's when he made his first real mistake. He brought up her personal life. Now, anyone who knows anything about Reba McEntire knows that she's been through some very public ups and downs, relationships that played out in the tabloids, moments of heartbreak that she eventually channeled into her music. But there's a difference between acknowledging someone's past with respect and digging into it for entertainment value. And Michael was about to cross that line. He asked her about finding love again, framing it in a way that sounded supportive on the surface, but carried an undertone of pity, like her personal life was something that needed fixing or commentary. He said something along the lines of how inspiring it was that she kept putting herself out there despite everything she had been through. The words hung in the air, and you could see Reba's jaw tighten. She took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. She said that she didn't think her personal life needed to be inspiring to anyone, that it was simply her life, and that the idea that a woman needed to be defined by her relationships or validated by finding love was exactly the kind of outdated thinking that she had spent her entire career pushing back against. The studio went quiet. Michael tried to laugh it off, saying he didn't mean it that way, that he was just trying to celebrate her resilience. Reba wasn't having it. She leaned forward slightly and said that if he wanted to celebrate her resilience, maybe he could talk about the fact that she had built multiple businesses, that she had broken barriers in a male-dominated industry, that she had created opportunities for other women in country music. She said that resilience wasn't about bouncing back from heartbreak for the entertainment of morning television audiences. It was about showing up every single day and doing the work, even when people try to reduce you to sound bites and sympathy stories. Michael was visibly uncomfortable now. He glanced toward the producers off camera, looking for some kind of lifeline, but Reba wasn't done. She said that she had been doing interviews for over 40 years, and she could spot a lazy question from a mile away. She said that she understood that morning shows had a format, that there were expectations and time constraints, but that didn't mean she had to sit there and smile while someone treated her life like gossip fodder. The audience was completely silent. Michael tried to regroup, saying that he had the utmost respect for her and that his questions were coming from a place of admiration. Reba nodded slowly, and there was something almost sad in her expression when she responded. She said that respect wasn't just about saying the right words. It was about doing the work to understand who you were talking to and what mattered to them. She said that if he had actually listened to her music, if he had paid attention to any of the interviews she had given over the years, he would know that she had been very clear about wanting to be recognized for her artistry and her business acumen, not just her personal relationships. Michael was scrambling now, trying to pivot to a different topic, asking about her upcoming projects. But the damage was done, and the energy in the studio had completely shifted. Reba answered his questions, but every response carried an edge, a subtle reminder that she was not going to let this slide, that she was not going to pretend everything was fine just to make him comfortable. The interview continued, but it felt less like a conversation and more like a masterclass in holding your ground. Michael cleared his throat and tried to regain control of the interview by asking about her latest album. He mentioned a few song titles, clearly reading from notes that someone had prepared for him, and asked what inspired the project. Reba looked at him with an expression that was hard to read, somewhere between amusement and frustration. She said that one of the songs he just mentioned wasn't even on her album. It was from a project she released 6 years ago. The audience let out a collective gasp, and you could see Michael's face flush as he realized his mistake. He apologized quickly, saying there must have been a mix-up with his notes, but Reba wasn't letting him off that easy. She said that this was exactly what she was talking about, that people would book her on shows and then not even take the time to know what she was actually promoting. She said that it wasn't just disrespectful to her. It was disrespectful to everyone watching who actually cared about her work and wanted to hear something real instead of watching someone fumble through talking points. Michael tried to defend himself, saying that they have dozens of guests every week and that it's impossible to be an expert on everyone. Reba tilted her head slightly and said that she wasn't asking him to be an expert. She was asking him to care enough to get the basic facts right. She said that when she shows up to do her job, she shows up prepared, and she expected the same courtesy from people who were supposed to be professionals. The tension was absolutely electric at this point. You could see members of the crew shifting uncomfortably, cameras still rolling, because this was live television, and there was nowhere to hide. Michael took a deep breath and said that he appreciated her honesty and that she was right to call him out. For a second, it seemed like maybe he was going to turn this around, maybe acknowledge the mistake, and move forward with some humility. But then he made his second major mistake of the morning. He said that he understood she was probably tired from touring, and that being on the road could make anyone a little cranky. The words came out before he could stop them, and the moment they did, you could see him realize what he had just said. Reba's expression went from firm to ice cold in an instant. She sat up straighter in her chair and asked him to repeat what he just said. Michael stammered, trying to backtrack, saying that wasn't what he meant. But Reba cut him off. She said, "Let me get this straight. You don't prepare for the interview. You get basic facts about my work wrong. You ask invasive questions about my personal life. And when I point out that this isn't okay, your response is to suggest that I'm cranky." She let the question hang in the air, and Michael looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He started to apologize again, but Reba held up her hand to stop him. She said that this was a problem that women in her industry, women in every industry, had to deal with this kind of dismissive attitude constantly. She said that if a male artist had called out an unprepared interviewer, he would be praised for standing up for himself, for demanding respect. But when a woman did it, suddenly she was difficult. She was cranky. She was overreacting. She said that she had been hearing variations of this her entire career, and she was done pretending it was acceptable. The audience started to applaud, a slow clap at first that built into genuine support. Michael looked stunned, clearly not expecting the audience to turn in her favor. He tried to speak, but Reba wasn't finished. She said that she knew he probably didn't mean any harm, that he was likely just following the same playbook that morning show hosts had been using for decades. But she said that intent didn't erase impact, and that maybe it was time for shows like this to rethink how they approached interviews with women, especially women who had earned the right to be treated as more than just friendly guests there to smile and promote. Michael finally managed to get a word in, saying that he heard her and that she was making valid points. He said that he clearly had messed up this interview, and that he took responsibility for that. Reba nodded, and for the first time since the interview started, her expression softened just slightly. She said that she appreciated him saying that, but that words were easy. It was a follow-through that mattered. She said that if he really wanted to make this right, he should think about how to do better next time. Not just with her, but with every guest who came on the show expecting to be treated with genuine interest and respect. There was a moment of silence, and then Michael asked if they could start over. He said that he would love to hear about what she was actually working on, what mattered to her right now, and that he would listen without trying to force the conversation into some predetermined narrative. Reba studied him for a moment, clearly weighing whether this was genuine or just another attempt to smooth things over for the cameras. Then she said, okay, but that she would hold him to that. Michael asked about her music, this time without any notes, just a straightforward question about what she wanted people to know about her current work. Reba's whole demeanor changed. She started talking about the themes in her new songs, about the stories she was trying to tell, about the collaborations that excited her. She talked about working with younger artists and how important it was to her to create space for new voices in country music. She spoke with passion and detail, and you could see that when she was actually given a chance to talk about what mattered to her. She was engaging and warm, and everything you would want in a guest. Michael asked follow-up questions that showed he was actually listening, building on what she said instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. He asked about her creative process, about how she decided which stories to tell through her music. Reba opened up more, talking about drawing from real life, about the responsibility she felt to her audience to be honest and vulnerable in her songwriting. The conversation flowed naturally, and for a few minutes, it actually felt like a real interview instead of performance. But then, Michael brought up her legacy. He asked how it felt to be considered one of the greatest country artists of all time, to have influenced so many people. It was meant as a compliment, but Reba's expression shifted again. She said that she appreciated the recognition, but that she didn't spend much time thinking about her legacy. She said that legacy was something other people worried about after you were gone, and she was still here, still working, still creating. She said that the focus on legacy sometimes felt like a polite way of putting someone out to pasture, of treating them like their best work was behind them. Michael tried to clarify that he didn't mean it that way, but Reba kept going. She said that this was another issue she had noticed in how the media talked about women her age. She said that men in country music could be in their 70s and still be treated like active, relevant artists, but women hit a certain age and suddenly every interview became about their legacy, their impact past tense. She said that she wasn't done, that she had no intention of slowing down, and that she would appreciate being talked about like someone who still had something to say, not like a museum piece. Michael was visibly struggling now, caught between trying to salvage what was left of the interview and genuinely grappling with what Reba was saying. He nodded slowly and said that he had never thought about it that way, that she was making him see things from a perspective he hadn't considered. Reba said that was the whole point, that if people in positions of influence, people with platforms like his, would actually take the time to think about these things, maybe the industry would start to change. She pointed out that morning television shaped how millions of people thought about celebrities, about success, about what mattered. She said that when shows like Good Morning America reduced women to their relationships, their age, their appearance, or treated their continued relevance as surprising instead of expected, it sent a message to everyone watching. She said that young women looking up to her deserved to see her being taken seriously for her work, not patronized or handled with kid gloves, because someone thought she might be too sensitive to handle a real conversation. Michael sat back in his chair, and you could tell he was actually processing what she was saying instead of just waiting to move on. He said that she was absolutely right, that he could see how the questions he asked and the way he framed things contributed to those larger problems. He said that it was uncomfortable to have this pointed out on live television, but that maybe that discomfort was necessary. Reba agreed, saying that growth was never comfortable, but that it was the only way things got better. Then she did something unexpected. She thanked him. She said that despite the rocky start, despite the missteps, the fact that he was willing to sit here and have this conversation instead of shutting down or getting defensive meant something. She said that a lot of people in his position would have gone to a commercial break, would have found a way to end the interview early, but he stayed and he listened. She said that was more than a lot of people would do, and she respected that. Michael looked genuinely moved. He said that he was grateful she pushed back, that she didn't just smile and nod through an interview that wasn't serving either of them. He said that this was probably the most real conversation he had had on the show in a long time, and that even though it was uncomfortable, it was also important. The audience applauded again, and this time it felt different. Less like they were taking sides, and more like they were witnessing something meaningful. But Reba wasn't quite finished. She said that she wanted to be clear about something, that this wasn't about attacking him personally or making him the villain. She said that he was working within a system that had been operating the same way for decades, and that system was the real problem. She said that morning shows, entertainment media in general, needed to rethink their approach, not just to women, but to all guests. She said that people tuning in deserved more than surface-level conversations and promotional fluff, that they were smart enough to appreciate depth and honesty. Michael asked what she thought would make interviews better, what changes she would want to see. Reba thought about it for a moment, and then said that it started with preparation and genuine curiosity. She said that if hosts took the time to actually engage with someone's work before the interview, if they came with questions that reflected real interest instead of just filling time, the conversations would naturally be better. She said that it also meant being willing to let the interview go somewhere unexpected, to follow the thread of what the guest was actually saying instead of forcing them back to predetermined talking points. She also said that there needed to be more awareness of the double standards and biases that shaped how different people were treated. She said that asking a woman about her personal life in a way you would never ask a man, or framing her age as something to overcome instead of a marker of experience and wisdom, those things added up. She said that every interview was an opportunity to either reinforce old stereotypes or challenge them, and that hosts had more power in that dynamic than they often realized. Michael said that everything she was saying made sense, and that he was going to take it seriously. He said that he hoped other people watching would think about it too, not just hosts and producers, but everyone who consumed media and had their own biases and assumptions. Reba smiled, a real smile this time, and said that was all she could ask for. She said that she didn't expect perfection from him or anyone else, but that she did expect people to try, to be willing to do better when they knew better. As the interview was winding down, Michael asked if there was anything else she wanted people to know. Reba paused, and when she spoke, her voice was softer, but still strong. She said that she wanted people to know that speaking up, setting boundaries, demanding respect, those things didn't make you difficult or ungrateful. She said that she had spent too many years worrying about being likable, about not making waves, and that it had taken her a long time to realize that being respected was more important than being liked. She said that younger artists, especially women, needed to hear that they didn't have to accept being treated poorly just because it was part of the business. She said that things only change when people refuse to accept the status quo, when they were willing to have uncomfortable conversations and hold people accountable. She said that this interview was a perfect example that it would have been easier for her to just smile through the questions she didn't like and collect her paycheck. But that easy wasn't always right. Michael thanked her for coming on the show and for being so honest, even when it made things difficult. He said that this was a conversation he wouldn't forget, and that he hoped it would be the start of doing things differently. Reba thanked him for listening and said that she hoped so too. The audience gave her a standing ovation as she stood up to leave, and even some of the crew members were clapping. As Reba walked off the set, the camera stayed on Michael for a moment. He looked directly into the camera and said that what just happened was a reminder that live television could be messy and uncomfortable, but that those moments were often the most important ones. He said that he was grateful to Reba for holding up a mirror and making him think harder about the work he did every day. He said that he hoped everyone watching would think about it too, about how we all contribute to the culture we live in and how we all have a responsibility to do better. The segment ended, and what people witnessed that morning was something rare in the world of carefully produced morning television. It was real, it was raw, and it was a masterclass in how to stand your ground without backing down. Reba McEntire showed up expecting to be treated with the respect she had earned. And when that didn't happen, she didn't stay silent. She called it out. She explained why it mattered. And she did it all with a combination of grace and steel that reminded everyone exactly why she had been a force in the industry for over 4 decades. So what do you think? Was Reba right to call out Michael the way she did? Or do you think she should have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we break down moments like this that you won't see analyzed anywhere else. What other live television moments do you want us to cover next?